He forced my silence with a settlement, but not my evidence. I had worked at Halstead Financial for 6 years when everything began to fall apart. I was a senior compliance analyst, which meant I checked numbers, reports, and risk statements before they went to the board. I liked rules. I liked clean math. Numbers did not lie, even when people did. My name is Fleur Smit, and I believed in doing things the right way. The trouble started on a rainy Monday in March. I was reviewing quarterly disclosures when I saw something strange. A line item had been changed after approval. The risk rating had been lowered. It did not match the raw data in our system. At first, I thought it was a simple mistake, but when I checked the previous quarter, I saw the same pattern. Adjustments, quiet edits. Each one made the company look safer than it really was. And every file I opened had one name attached to the final approval: Daniel Hargrove, our chief financial officer, the man everyone trusted. I did not jump to conclusions. I pulled old reports from the archive and compared them to the versions sent to investors. I printed them and laid them across my dining table that night. Red pen in hand, I circled the changes. The differences were small, but they mattered. A higher risk score here. A missing note about debt exposure there. Together, they painted a false picture. I barely slept. The next morning, I requested a meeting with my direct supervisor, Carla Bennett. I explained what I had found. I showed her the copies. She frowned, but told me not to worry. "Daniel signs off on everything," she said. There must be a reason. That answer did not calm me. I kept digging. I traced digital timestamps and saw that edits were made late at night, sometimes minutes before filings were sent out. My stomach felt tight all week. By Friday, I knew it was not a mistake. It was a pattern, and I had proof. I followed company policy. I submitted a formal internal report through the ethics portal. I attached documents and wrote a careful summary. I did not accuse. I simply stated facts. 2 days later, I was called into a meeting. Carla was there. So was a man from legal. They thanked me for raising concerns. They promised a review. Daniel Hargrove did not attend. For a week, nothing happened. Then my calendar invites started disappearing. Projects I led were reassigned. I was left out of a board prep session I had handled for years. When I asked Carla about it, she avoided my eyes. "Things are shifting," she said. "Just focus on your tasks." I noticed coworkers whispering. One friend stopped eating lunch with me. It felt like I had crossed an invisible line. By the end of April, HR emailed me about a performance discussion. I had never had a bad review, but I knew what was coming. The meeting room had glass walls. Everyone could see inside. I sat across from 2 HR managers and an outside attorney I had never met. They spoke in calm voices. They said my approach had created tension. They said I seemed misaligned with leadership. They suggested maybe I was not a culture fit. Then they slid a thick folder across the table. A settlement agreement. 6 months of salary. Health benefits through the end of the year. A neutral reference letter. In exchange for my immediate resignation and my silence. There was a confidentiality clause. A non-disparagement clause. If I spoke publicly about internal matters, I could be sued for damages. My hands shook as I turned the pages. I asked if Daniel knew about this. The attorney smiled politely. "This is a company decision." I understood the message. Sign and leave quietly, or stay and be crushed. I took the folder home and sat at my kitchen table again. The same place where I had circled the altered reports. I read every line twice. The silence clause was strict. I could not talk to media. I could not discuss internal investigations. I could not reveal confidential documents. The penalty was more money than I had ever saved. My parents told me to think about my future. "Sometimes walking away is the smart choice," my mother said. Friends said the payout was generous. But something inside me would not settle. 2 weeks before that meeting, when I realized my internal report was going nowhere, I had taken another step. I had used a protected whistleblower portal run by a federal regulatory agency. I had uploaded everything: emails, financial extracts, metadata reports, my written statement. It was legal, it was confidential, and it operated outside company control. They could force my silence, but they could not pull back what I had already submitted. After 3 sleepless nights, I signed the agreement. I handed it in on a Monday morning. Daniel passed me in the hallway that same day. He smiled the way he always did, confident and calm. "I hear you're moving on," he said. "Yes," I replied. "Best of luck," he said, as if nothing had happened. By Friday, my access card stopped working. IT collected my laptop. My email account vanished. An internal memo announced that I had chosen to pursue new opportunities. No mention of my report. No mention of misconduct. I packed my framed photos into a cardboard box. As I walked out, I felt small and defeated. Daniel, on the other hand, was featured on the company website that week. He had won an industry award for ethical leadership. I almost laughed when I saw it online. He thought he had buried everything. He thought the story was over, but it was only beginning. The first month after I left was quiet. Too quiet. I updated my resume and applied for jobs. Interviews were polite, but distant. Recruiters asked why I left Halstead. I repeated the line from my reference letter, seeking new challenges. The settlement agreement sat in my desk drawer like a warning. Sometimes I wondered if I had made it all up, if maybe there was an explanation for the changes. Then I would open my saved files and look again at the evidence. It was real. In June, I received an email from a private address. It simply said, "We confirm receipt of your submission. Investigation pending." No signature, no details. My heart pounded when I read it. It meant someone had looked at my files. It meant I was not alone. Still, nothing changed at Halstead. Their stock price held steady. Daniel appeared on business podcasts, talking about risk management in uncertain times. He looked relaxed, and I stayed silent. Summer passed slowly. I found contract work with a small accounting firm. It paid less, but it kept me busy. In August, news broke that Halstead was expanding into 2 new markets overseas. Investors cheered. Daniel gave interviews about bold growth. I watched from my couch, feeling like a ghost. Then, in early September, I received a second message from the regulator. This time, it asked for clarification on specific files. They wanted confirmation of dates and internal processes. I answered carefully. I did not tell anyone. Not even my parents. The settlement agreement did not stop me from speaking to regulators. The law protected whistleblowers, who reported through official channels. That protection was my thin shield. At Halstead, I heard through a former coworker that document requests had started. Auditors were asking for historical filings and raw data. Executives called it routine, but I knew better. The gears had begun to turn. By October, the mood inside Halstead had shifted. My former coworker texted me one night. "Regulators are here," she wrote. "They're interviewing people." My hands went cold. She said investigators asked about late-night edits to disclosures. They wanted to know who authorized changes and why. Daniel reportedly told staff it was standard compliance review. He reassured everyone that the company had nothing to hide. But more emails arrived from the agency. They requested backup files that only someone in compliance would understand. They were cross-checking. I sent what I could from my personal records. Each message felt like stepping deeper into dangerous water. I knew if my role ever became public, Halstead might accuse me of breaking the settlement. But the law was clear. I had reported before signing. The truth was already out. By November, rumors spread that subpoenas had been issued. Daniel still appeared confident in public. But cracks were forming. Thanksgiving came and went. I tried to act normal at family dinner. I smiled and talked about my contract job. I did not mention subpoenas. In December, A major investor questioned Halstead's disclosures during an earnings call. Daniel answered smoothly, saying all filings were accurate and transparent. I watched the replay online. He did not blink. Yet days later, another email arrived from the regulator. They thanked me for my cooperation and informed me that the investigation had advanced to a formal stage. Formal. The word felt heavy. I began to fear retaliation. Could Halstead claim I breached confidentiality? Could they freeze my settlement payments? I reread the agreement. It did not forbid participation in government investigations. In fact, one clause stated that nothing limited lawful reporting. They had written their own weakness into the contract. By January, board members at Halstead were holding emergency meetings. Winter air felt sharp and electric. Something was coming. In February, almost a year after I first spotted the altered numbers, everything sped up. News outlets reported that Halstead Financial was under federal investigation for potential disclosure violations. The company issued a brief statement saying it was cooperating fully. Daniel's name was not mentioned. Yet, my phone buzzed nonstop that day. Former coworkers asked if I had seen the news. I kept my responses short and neutral. Inside, I felt a storm of fear and relief. The investigation was no longer secret. A week later, another update appeared. Regulators had expanded the probe to include executive decision-making. That meant Daniel. At Halstead, tension filled the halls, according to my friend. Executives stayed late. Lawyers walked in and out of offices. I imagined Daniel sitting behind his wide desk, reviewing documents, perhaps finally realizing that someone had gone beyond internal channels. He still did not know it was me, and he did not know how much evidence they had. March marked 1 full year since I found the first altered file. On a Tuesday morning, I woke up to a flood of notifications. My social media feed was filled with one headline: Department of Financial Oversight files charges against Halstead's CFO. My heart pounded as I clicked. The press release was detailed and direct. It accused Daniel Hargrove of knowingly approving altered risk disclosures to mislead investors. It listed dates, quarters, and specific filings. Every example matched my original report. His name appeared in bold. I read the document twice, barely breathing. It mentioned that the investigation was initiated after information was provided by a confidential whistleblower. Confidential. They did not name me. By noon, Halstead's stock had dropped sharply. News anchors replayed clips of Daniel speaking about integrity. By afternoon, the board placed him on administrative leave. I sat at my kitchen table again, just like the night I circled those reports. This time, my hands were steady. The days that followed were chaotic in the news, but strangely calm for me. Reporters camped outside Halstead's headquarters. Commentators debated how long the misconduct had lasted. Former employees began sharing stories online. Still, I said nothing. The settlement agreement remained in effect. I honored it. The regulator contacted me once more, thanking me for my cooperation and informing me that charges had been filed publicly. They reminded me my identity would remain protected unless required by court order. I felt both proud and scared. Daniel released a statement denying all allegations. He claimed the edits were appropriate judgment calls and blamed lower-level staff for data inconsistencies. That hurt. For a moment, I feared he might try to point toward compliance analysts like me, but the press release was clear. It stated that evidence showed direct executive approval of changes despite internal warnings. Internal warnings. My report had been acknowledged in writing months before my exit. He could not erase that trail. 2 weeks later, Daniel resigned. The board issued another statement, promising stronger oversight and a renewed commitment to transparency. They hired an outside firm to conduct a full review. News outlets dug into Daniel's past interviews. They replayed clips where he spoke about ethical leadership. The contrast was sharp. Investors filed civil suits against Halstead, claiming they relied on false disclosures. Through it all, I kept working my small accounting job. No one there knew the full story. One evening, my former coworker called me. Her voice shook. "People think a whistleblower started all this," she said. "Management is furious. They're trying to figure out who." My chest tightened. "Do they suspect anyone?" I asked. "They have no idea," she said. "The regulator won't tell them." That was the power of independent investigation. Daniel had forced my silence with a settlement, but he had never controlled the agency that now held his fate. In April, court proceedings began. The government filed detailed complaints outlining each alleged violation. They included internal email excerpts and timestamp logs. I recognized some of them instantly. One email showed Daniel instructing a team to adjust risk language to avoid unnecessary alarm. Another showed him approving a lower exposure figure minutes before filing. The evidence spoke clearly. Public opinion shifted quickly. Commentators who once praised him now questioned his leadership. Halstead's new interim CFO held press conferences, promising cooperation and reform. I stayed out of sight. Sometimes I walked past Halstead's building just to feel the change in the air. Security seemed tighter. The company logo looked smaller somehow. At home, I reread the court documents late at night. I felt a mix of anger and closure. For months, I had doubted myself. Now the truth was printed in black and white. By early summer, more details came out during hearings. Regulators described how altered disclosures affected investor decisions. They explained how accurate risk ratings might have changed stock prices. Daniel appeared in court looking tired but defiant. Cameras flashed as he entered. I watched coverage online, volume low. He still denied wrongdoing. His lawyers argued that edits were within his authority and that no intent to mislead existed. But the prosecution presented timelines. They showed when internal compliance concerns were raised and how changes were made after those concerns. My concern. Though my name was never spoken, I knew my report formed part of that timeline. Friends asked why I seemed distracted. I told them I was just busy. Inside, I felt something new. Not revenge, not joy, just relief. The system had not ignored me after all. But relief did not last long. One evening, I received a certified letter from a law firm representing Daniel. My hands trembled as I opened it. The letter stated they were reviewing potential breaches of confidentiality agreements by former employees. It did not name me directly. But the timing felt sharp. Had they guessed? I read the settlement again, line by line. I had not spoken to media. I had not shared documents publicly. I had cooperated only with regulators, as protected by law. Still, fear crept in. I contacted an attorney experienced in whistleblower protection. After reviewing my documents, she reassured me. "They're fishing," she said. "If you reported before signing and did not violate the terms, you're protected." Protected. The word helped, but sleep did not come easily that night. Daniel was cornered, and cornered people often strike wildly. In July, Halstead agreed to pay a large civil penalty to settle part of the case. The company admitted to certain disclosure failures but did not admit criminal intent. Daniel's case moved forward separately. He resigned from several board positions and stepped down from industry committees. Awards were quietly removed from the company website. The same magazine that once praised him now published a feature titled "The Cost of Overconfidence." I clipped the article and tucked it into a folder with my original evidence. One afternoon, I received a letter from the regulator informing me that I might qualify for a whistleblower award due to the sanctions collected. I stared at the letter for a long time. Money had never been my goal, but recognition, even if private, mattered. I filled out the required forms and mailed them back, my silence still held in public. But inside, my voice felt stronger than ever. Then another twist came. A former coworker called me late one night. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "IT is reviewing old access logs," she said. "They're trying to see who downloaded disclosure drafts before they were edited." My heart pounded. I had downloaded those drafts. For internal review. For my job. Why now? I asked. They think someone built a case from internal files. The net was widening, but they were searching in the wrong place because the most critical files had been submitted through secure regulatory channels long before I signed anything. And those logs were not theirs to see. By August, the criminal phase of Daniel's case began. Prosecutors charged him with knowingly misleading investors through falsified disclosures. Court transcripts were posted online. I read them carefully. Witnesses described late-night edits and pressure to smooth out risk language. Some admitted they felt uneasy but trusted Daniel's authority. I understood that feeling. Power can make people doubt their own eyes. One witness mentioned an internal report that raised concerns months before the filings. The court did not reveal who wrote it, but the date matched mine. Daniel's lawyers tried to argue that the report lacked context. They said executives must make judgment calls in complex markets, but the prosecution emphasized patterns, not single decisions. Patterns were what I had seen first. The trial date was set for the following spring. As leaves began to fall again, I realized nearly 2 years had passed since that rainy Monday. Time had stretched and twisted, yet the truth had stayed steady. Then, something unexpected happened. An anonymous blog post appeared online, claiming the whistleblower had fabricated evidence. It suggested that a disgruntled former employee manipulated data before leaving. The comments section exploded with speculation. I felt sick reading it. Was this Daniel's strategy? Cast doubt, create noise, blur facts. My lawyer advised me to ignore it. False narratives often appear before trials, she said. They test public reaction. Still, I could not shake the unease. Truth was strong, but lies were loud. Winter returned, and with it came more headlines. Analysts debated whether Daniel would take a plea deal. Some predicted prison time. Others believed he would settle quietly. I tried not to get lost in speculation. My own life had moved forward. I accepted a permanent position at the small firm where I had been contracting. They valued careful review and open discussion. One day, my new boss praised me for catching a minor reporting error before it went out. "You saved us trouble," he said. His words meant more than he knew. Meanwhile, pretrial hearings continued. Prosecutors revealed additional emails that strengthened their case. Daniel appeared thinner in recent photos. The man who once walked Halstead's halls with easy confidence now entered court surrounded by attorneys. I sometimes wondered if he had guessed it was me, but it did not matter. The evidence had its own voice. Then, in January, another shock arrived. Daniel's legal team filed a motion requesting disclosure of the whistleblower's identity, claiming it was necessary for a fair defense. My chest tightened when I read the news alert. If granted, my name could become public. For days, I refreshed court updates constantly. Finally, the judge denied the motion. The court ruled that the evidence stood on its own and that revealing the whistleblower was not required. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. But the message was clear. He was desperate. In March, almost 2 years after my discovery, Daniel entered a plea agreement. He admitted to approving misleading disclosures and acknowledged that he ignored internal compliance warnings. In exchange, prosecutors recommended a reduced sentence. The news spread fast. Headlines used words like "fall from grace" and "corporate scandal." Commentators replayed his old speeches one more time, now with disbelief. During the plea hearing, the judge asked him directly whether he understood the charges. He said yes. He did not look at the camera. He did not mention any names. I watched the clip once, then turned off my screen. I felt no urge to celebrate, only a quiet sense of completion. But even in that moment, another twist unfolded. The plea agreement included a detailed statement of facts. It described internal warnings raised by compliance staff that were dismissed by senior leadership. That sentence struck me hard. Dismissed. The court now recognized what had happened inside that glass building. He had not misunderstood. He had chosen. And that choice was now recorded permanently in federal documents. Sentencing took place in early summer. The courtroom was full of reporters. The judge spoke about trust, responsibility, and the damage caused when leaders choose deception. Daniel received a prison sentence and financial penalties. Gasps filled the room when the term was announced. I followed updates through live blogs. When it was over, I stepped outside and took a long walk. The sky was bright and clear. I thought about the glass-walled meeting room where they had handed me that settlement. They believed money and silence would protect them. They underestimated the power of a single report filed through the right channel. My phone buzzed with a final email from the regulator. It confirmed the conclusion of the case and thanked me again for my cooperation. No fanfare. No public praise. Just closure. Yet one last surprise came weeks later. A civil lawsuit filed by investors included a reference to internal documentation preserved by a former compliance analyst prior to separation. Preserved. That word mattered. It meant the timeline was undeniable. The evidence existed before they tried to silence me, and that detail sealed every argument. Months later, the whistleblower award decision arrived. The regulator granted me a percentage of the collected penalties. The amount was more than the settlement Daniel's team had offered. I sat quietly as I read the letter. The irony was sharp. They had paid me to leave and stay silent. Now the government compensated me for speaking through lawful channels. I used part of the money to pay off my student loans. I donated another portion to a nonprofit that supports ethical business practices. Still, I never spoke publicly about my role. The confidentiality agreement remained in place, and I respected it. But I no longer felt trapped by it. Silence chosen is different from silence forced, and here was the quiet twist no one saw. Halstead revised its settlement templates company-wide. New agreements now included clear language stating that nothing restricted lawful reporting to authorities. My case had changed policy, even without my name attached. Halstead slowly rebuilt its reputation. New leadership introduced stricter controls and clearer reporting standards. Investors regained some confidence. From time to time, articles referenced the whistleblower who sparked reform. My name was never mentioned. I preferred it that way. One evening, I ran into a former colleague at a grocery store. She looked at me thoughtfully. "Did you ever feel like you weren't crazy?" she asked. I smiled softly. "Sometimes." She nodded. I'm glad someone spoke up. I did not confirm anything. I did not need to. The truth had already reshaped the company, but suspense lingered in small ways. Every time an unknown number called my phone, my heart skipped. Every time I saw Daniel's name in a legal update about appeals, I felt a flicker of tension, because stories like this never vanish completely. They echo. Looking back, I often think about that first moment when I saw the altered number. I could have ignored it. I could have assumed someone else would handle it. Life would have been easier, but easier is not always right. The months of doubt, fear, and silence tested me. There were nights I questioned everything, yet each step followed a clear path. Report internally. Document carefully. Submit evidence through protected channels. Sign the settlement, but understand its limits. Stay patient. The timeline remained steady, even when my emotions did not. Truth moves slowly, but it moves. And here is the final twist that still gives me chills. The timestamp on my regulatory submission was logged 11 days before HR first contacted me about performance concerns. 11 days. They had already sensed something. They tried to act first, but they were too late. Today, when I sit at my desk reviewing reports, I remember what happened. I remember the glass room, the folder sliding toward me, and the polite smiles that tried to erase my voice. Daniel Hargrove believed a settlement could control the story. He believed my signature meant the end. He was wrong. He forced my silence with a settlement, but not my evidence. Evidence lives in timestamps, in archived emails, in files stored beyond one company's reach. It lives in agencies that operate independently. It lives in systems built to protect those who speak carefully and lawfully. I never stood on a stage. I never gave an interview. Yet the truth came out. And here is the hook that still lingers. Somewhere in another office, at another company, someone is staring at numbers that do not add up. They are wondering if they should speak, if they will be believed. If silence is safer, I hope they understand what I learned. Silence can be bought, but truth, once documented and delivered to the right hands, cannot be buried. And that is where real power lives.